bit, because I think the hesitation that I hear from people about private operators of campgrounds, and I agree with you, I think they can offer and do offer a great experience a number of times. I know there's one spot that I always stop in just the other side of Valemont, because it's the right place and they do a nice job and it's a private campground. I'm very happy to go there. But I think the hesitation people have is that when you have a private operator, will we end up in the point where a private operator is operating campsites that are in protected areas? Because the concern always is that you end up with corners being cut or not the same level of vigilance. Let's face it, the government has a job, part of which is around protection, and those employees are going to be more likely to kind of honor the boundaries of the wilderness area they're in. You may not get that same vigilance with a private operator who has a profit motive. That's why they're in business. Fine, I've got nothing against that. But there's a different focus on why they're doing something. And I think people's hesitation is, are we going to be turning over our public campgrounds to private, and what will be the result of that? Will there still be the same vigilance around protecting it in context?
I'm happy to engage, because this is a really, really important discussion. I don't think that 20 years ago you had people willing to pay for an ecological experience. A few, but not very darn many. Most people hooked up the tent trailer and went and camped. And the world now has really changed. And I agree, the fit of privatizing our campgrounds hasn't gone as good as I certainly would have liked, because you take a circumstance that might work for government, doesn't necessarily work in a private. We tied their hands in many ways about providing camping experiences that people wanted. And I agree, if we don't very carefully manage our resources, when I talk about access to sensitive areas, and I think the other thing that private industry has gotten a little smart is that they can't do the stuff they used to do and get away with it. And we have smarter people in government, I think, and in the business that know it's about pristine wilderness. I can tell you, I don't know if she's ever had the good fortune to go into some of the remote areas, whether it's a fishing camp or something. The operators of these facilities that I have had the good fortune of are absolutely the fussiest people I've ever met. There is no more of this throw your plate in the fire or your plastic fork or a beer can in the creek. They are far more aware. But I agree with you. When we're going to get into the area providing the experience that is truly rare, we'll either need to be very hands-on, or we'll need to have very, very clear guidelines about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and there really shouldn't be a whole bunch of gray in the middle. So as we go forward and develop that in Alberta, we need to watch, but there is a way. I believe you can, if you're going to have access and under managed conditions, I believe that you can have that partnership with private operators that I think exists there now in many cases.
The honourable member.
The other piece of this then is, if we're looking to, one of the problems we had when we handed over sites before was that the infrastructure wasn't in great shape. And I'm thinking of some of the campsites that I've been into, one of which is fairly close to where I have a recreational property. It's actually next door. And it was in, for what I was used to for the province of Alberta, it was in crappy shape. You know, the outhouse wasn't in good repair, the door was hanging, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sorry, a little pun there. And it didn't get any better under the management, and that was actually managed by a local fish and game association, right? But that's when you were trying to get other people to manage it. So I'm wondering, if you're looking at shifting this, is there a long-term plan to invest in the infrastructure so it gets handed over at a certain standard, and that standard is to be kept up, or is it just as is where is? We're handing it over now for you to manage, you take it as it is and you improve it, or what are you looking at? Are we going to bring it up to a standard and expect it to be kept, or are we going to hand it over and say you bring it up to speed, or keep it, whatever, let it go?
Yeah, President Treasury Board.
No, I'll tell you, and this comes from experience, because I did take one of the parks to run, and I found I've done everything, and profit has never really been a big deal. But one of the things we did is we tried to get private business to come in, and then we wouldn't let them do what they would do. And everybody in the business will tell you that their washroom facilities and parks are absolutely the most important thing you can do. And yet you cannot go in and rebuild a washroom on the money you're generating from a 5-year contract in a park of 80 sites. I can tell you that won't work. And so we need to, as a government, to be able to go to private operators and say, okay, if you're going to make that investment, you have to be able to get a return, because nobody in their right mind, me included, would do it. But I know and I was fortunate to have a darn good ranger and some pretty good representative, and we were able to make it. I said, okay, I'll invest, and I put some big dollars in, but I had to have time to recover them. And so there was no incentive for many people to improve it, because they still got to get a return. And so maybe it was the 5-year or the 2-year contract some wanted to have. You just can't make long-term business decisions on a 2-year opportunity to get it. And so you could invest and lose your equity and to a low bidder, which in many ways, giving our parks to a low bidder probably isn't going to get the experience that we want from tourism. So it's that fine balance between, an open and transparent business deal, and yet bringing in someone who's going to sell the experience that we want people to have when they come to Alberta and get a return from the investment that they're willing to make.
The honourable member.
Clarify, what I'm hearing then is that what we're likely to get is a contract that would set out what infrastructure was expected to be maintained or invested in by the private contractor, but in return for that, there's a longer period that the contract runs for in order to allow them to recoup their investment and make a profit out of it. But we wouldn't necessarily be investing up front the money to say, okay, it's in a Class A shape, and we expect you to keep it in Class A shape. We're not going to do the investment up front. We're going to put it in as part of the contract that they keep it up. Then, and this is going to be a familiar refrain coming from me, where's the monitoring and compliance enforcement? Because if you're going to run those contracts, and it's one of the things you guys are not good about, is monitoring those contracts to make sure that what you think was going to happen, happened, and to be able to catch it before it's too far gone. So, go ahead.
It's probably the most important part of what she said before in the response. The fact is that when we went to privatizing, most of them were in the crappy shape you talked about, and that really puts people at a huge disadvantage. And I really can't speak for how the minister wants to approach getting the washrooms and the rest of the parks into a shape that you would be able to have a contract that you could maintain. But if the darn thing is falling apart when you get it, and normal contracts say you will, given normal wear and tear, return it in as good or better shape than you get it. But if you got it and it's fallen apart, you give it back, it's fallen apart, what have you accomplished? So there does need to be that discussion about how important that the starting, the way we're going to go to it, and then you can monitor. But I agree. I think we spent a great deal of money, and we were known. Once again, I can talk bad about myself. And we were known for years as having some of the best provincial parks. We still got the parks, but we haven't managed them as well as we could have. And I can accept that because I've seen it myself. But it doesn't mean we can't be better. And I think the partnership that they've developed with industry right now, so that customer service becomes part of one of the biggest things they talk about. I'm talking the camping experience, and I know that other lineup over here with the environmental experience. I think they're on the right track. I really do. I'm still involved with, but very remotely, with the Campground Association. They've needed to pick up their boots, and so I accept your nice criticism.
The honourable member.